You're listening to the Product Coalition podcast with Jay Stansel. This is where product mastery happens. This is where careers are made. Welcome to the Product Coalition podcast. Let's go.
Stansel, and I'm really excited today to be joined by Andrea Bronzini. Now, Andrea has spent over 20 years in business consulting, 8 of those deep inside the experimentation world, including time at CXL and Spiro, one of the most recognized conversion optimization agencies on the planet. He ran hundreds of thousands of simulations. He's helped teams ship winning experiments. And then he did something most people in his position would never do. He walked away from all of it. Not because the work dried up, but because he became convinced the entire industry was optimizing for the wrong thing. Here is why this matters for every product team listening. If you've ever shipped an A/B test winner that quietly flatlined after that launch, Andrea is about to explain exactly why that happened and why it is far more common than anyone honestly admits. We're going to dig into 3 threads today. First is why the observed lift in experiments is dramatically more unstable than teams realize and how noise gets certified as a signal. Second, we're going to look at why statistical significance, the metric that every PM learns to trust, might actually be the wrong goal for experimentation entirely. And third, what a better decision framework looks like, including 2 free tools Andrea's built from scratch during a sabbatical where he rebuilt his entire methodology. Andrea, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you join me today.
Hi, Jay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Andrea, the world of experimentation. Let's get started there. What attracted you and your career into this component of this industry?
Yeah. So I've been helping companies to grow online since, for the past 20 years. And I've been working in sales, in marketing, in product. And at some point, I ended up running experiments. This was like I started in 2018 at Spiro. At the time was CXL agency. And that's where I really felt, okay, we can make a difference here because by running experiments, you can really see what's working. And I just fell in love with it. It's intriguing, all this data and all these changes you can make, and you can measure the results. So I really like that. And I've been doing this for the past 8 years.
Fantastic. So before we look into some of these components that are affecting the way teams are conducting experiments, some of their methodology points that we're going to go into today, can I ask, Andrea, over your career, what's the maturity timeline look like? You know, what's been the lead up to where we are today that you've seen from your perspective when it comes to really understanding and becoming better at running healthy experiments? Where's the industry come from and where is it at right now?
Yeah, so I have to say that the industry overall, it hasn't changed much in the past 20 years. I mean, every framework we use for testing is inherited from medical fields. And this 95% certification threshold is also inherited from there. And it hasn't changed. It's been like this forever since we started running experiments. And I see that as a bit of a problem because the question was never how can the business grow with this? The question was how can we avoid killing people when, in the medical field? So this 95% or 99%, they are very strict for that reason, that we don't want to make harm. But the business works in a different way. Like, for example, think if you're running a marketing campaign and you set aside a budget, I don't know, 50K or 100K for that campaign, you don't have a 95% certainty that the campaign will actually produce results. You're just making a bet. And that bet is probably your confidence is like 60% or 70%. So that's a business decision. And in my opinion, I think we should treat the split testing a little bit like that. Because why we ask split testing to be 95% sure when all the other business decisions are less than 60% sure? So that is a little bit a disconnect I started to feel between what the business should do and what the traditional framework for testing tells you to do. And the industry hasn't moved in that direction in 20 years. We have been always running the things in the same way. So there is no way that if your company wants to take more risk, there is no way you can do it because tools don't allow for that.
Andrea, before we start to look at some of the tools that you've built and some of the conversation around how these tools are identifying some opportunities to change the way we think about running experiments. Before we get into that, could you just set us going on a recap of what does some healthy experimentation basics look like? Just as pure fundamentals from your perspective before we jump into some more of the details.
Sure. So when running an experiment, there is a lot of talking about this threshold. So again, 95%, right? But that's not the only variable that you need to keep in mind. What I discovered through simulation, it's in retrospect is a bit obvious, but simulation makes it very evident because you have to set the rules, right? So the rules is not only the threshold. You need to know how long the experiment runs, when you are allowed to start looking at the data. For example, I give it 2 weeks minimum, so 14 days. That's a rule. And I will explain later why 14 days. But this is just one part of the decision policy. Then the other thing is that how often can you look? And this is what people refer to as peaking. So can you look at the results during the experiment, or you look only when you reach the preset duration? And all these little decisions that are part of your decision policy influence the outcome. So the winners you find or not find and how big the winners are depend on all these set of rules that you put together before you run the experiment. And many teams I've worked with, when I joined their experimentation program, they have very different ways of doing things. And even if you have an analyst on board, the methodology the analyst uses, it's very personalized. Everybody's running tests in different ways. So those differences in methodology affect the outcome. So we can say that the split testing is not black and white like many vendors want us to believe. It's you have to interpret the results, and the methodology you use changes the outcome of the call. Of is this a winner or not? By how much is a winner, and so on. So the decision policy in the end is what you have to set, not just the threshold.
No, so I think that's an important point that some people may be coming into this for the first time or blindly or going out and buying tools. But some of these fundamentals from someone as experienced as you, I think is a great place to start. So Andrea, we're going to be talking a little bit about noise and signal. Now I know you've built your own tools to help product people and businesses understand more around what's going on in the world of A/B testing with a fresh methodology. Could you introduce those for us, and let's get stuck into some of these points. And my first real question is, you've said that A/B test winners are often just noise. What do you mean by that, and how could you bring that to life for us visually?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So all the measurement we run on experiments, so we measure traffic and we measure conversions. That's the two variables we have to work with, and this gives us a conversion rate, right? Now, in the physical world, when we measure something, we know that there is error, right? But if I measure a table and I measure it 3 times I'm gonna get more or less the same measurement. The error is in the measurement tool, right? But the number is more or less the same. Now, because we have this experience in the physical world, we can't really feel what the stochastic noise does. And stochastic means random. And conversion rates are randomized, if you want. They follow like a Bernoulli process, which is not what we see in the everyday experience. So stochastic noise is way bigger than we can feel. And I built this tool to just visualize that. Now I'm going to share a screen with you, and so you can see what I mean. So can you see the screen?
All good, yeah. And for those listening in and don't have the video, we're going to describe as much as possible here. So stay with us.
Okay, so let's switch to this tab, conversion rate. And here we have two numbers. So in this experiment, we would have 4,000 users, 120 conversions, and this observation happens on 28 days. So if you want, this is like 1,000 users per week. Very small numbers, very close to what most companies can achieve in terms of traffic and conversions. So if I run an observation, before that, so 4,000 users and 120 conversions makes 3% conversion rate. Okay, you follow me?
Really?
Okay, so we measure this, and so the conversion rate is 3%. Now, suppose this is true, and so this will be true for this demonstration. Then we're going to generate a stochastic realization of this same conversion rate, 3%, with with a simulator. And what we see is something like this. Look at this. So these are like daily values of the conversion rate that you're going to measure. Okay, so on the screen right now, if you don't see the screen, you see like there is a path which is wobbling, and this is what you would measure if you run the experiment. You could measure if you run the experiment, but look what happens here. The real conversion rate is 3%, but what you measure at day 28 is 3.5. You see that? Now, if I do it again, now this second run comes close. And as I do this more times, you see that we're starting to get a cloud of stochastic paths, and this cloud is quite wide. So what you're seeing here is noise doing this. And if I take the upper one, the upper stochastic path we could measure, and the lower one, more or less at 28 days, you see that here we have 3.6%, and here we have 2.5%. So the gap is quite big, and the real conversion rate is in the middle. This is the concept of uncertainty, which is very well known. But one mistake I see teams making is that they look at the conversion rate they have measured, and they take that for granted. But the uncertainty is more important than the point conversion rate. You with me?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. The uncertainty is more important than the conversion rate. I like this component. Okay.
Yeah,
Keep going.
Okay. So these are conversion rates, which are the primary component of the experiment. You have two. You have conversion rate for A and conversion rate for B. Okay. Now let's talk about lift. Lift follows the same principles, but it has double uncertainty, because you have the uncertainty of A, conversion rate of A, and the uncertainty of conversion rate of B. And lift is conversion rate of B divided conversion rate of A. You follow me? Yeah. So
Yes.
let's look at lift. We can do the same thing. So same numbers for A, and B as 10 conversions more in this example. So I run the observation, and the underlying lift here is 8.33. So kind of normal lift, not too high. if I run this observation, this is what I see. So one stochastic run for lift, it goes below the observed lift. And we are here at minus 3.9. So this is even negative right now, the first one we ran. Now I do it again. This goes exactly through the same measurement we ran. And this is higher, you see? And if I keep doing this, and I do it many, many times, you see that all these stochastic paths, these are possible realization of the measurement, they form a cloud. Now, this cloud has a particular shape that is very, very interesting and important for who runs experiments, so teams. And you see that this shape, as I keep generating stochastic runs, it's sort of a trumpet, you see? Like it's very wide at the beginning, and then it shrinks with time. Actually, it shrinks with sample size, all right? So this is what is happening in reality. And again, if we look at, let's move this a bit. So if I take 28 days and we look at the actual numbers of what we could have measured, you see that the highest stochastic path is as an observed lift of 45%, 45, not 8. And the lowest is minus 25. So the uncertainty here at week 4 for this particular example is massive. And sometimes it will be that your experiment really like runs on this path and you measure 45%. And the tool will tell you, oh, yes, you got a 45% lift. But that's not reality, because the reality is 8.33%. You see that?
I do.
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why winners are inflated, and why people, if they're not aware of this, the noise, the principle behind the measurement that we're making, they may be fooled into thinking they found a super winner, when in reality it's just noise pushing the stochastic path up, and you're just measuring noise.
Okay. So to bring this to life in a hypothetical scenario here, Andrea, let's say this is a sign-up page for a SaaS business. What would the product manager or the person responsible for growth of that page, now they could see what you've got on the screen here, which is some very different stories, both above and below the point. What would they do different because they can see this?
Yes,
that's
a very good question. So first, be aware of noise. And before I answer your question, I want to make an analogy. Think of noise, think of the experiment as measuring a ripple on the surface of the ocean, okay? You want to measure that ripple, but the problem is that the ocean is not stationary. It moves like this. There are waves. So noise is the wave. And when noise goes down, you can't measure the ripple, even if the ripple is a winner, right? All these paths are winners because the underlying lift is plus 8.23%, but half of them, like a large part of them, is below the zero threshold. So why? Because the noise brought those paths down. Okay, so that's the wave going down. And when instead the wave goes up, it's easier to measure the ripple. Okay, so what can you do different? First, you must be aware of this. Second, you always have to work with uncertainty. And third, you need to start thinking of duration as something you model. Now, if you have an analyst or like a consultant like me, and they run power calculations, that is kind of already taken care of. But the problem with that is that power calculations are so strict. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept of power. This is like statistics. probably, I mean, most teams I worked with, they are not really into statistics. And again, if they do not have an analyst, that's a problem. But what Power does, it helps you to catch more winners, basically. But it does that by extending the sample size like massively. And sometimes it comes out you need to have 100,000 users per variation, and you just don't have them. Like the company doesn't have that much traffic, and you still have to make decisions, and you still have to run the experiment. So what happens is that teams just run the experiment for a fixed time instead, and they give it 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And you see here in the simulator, as you move the slider here, you can see how times affect the experiment. So what I would suggest is that you use a tool like this to see how prolonging the experiment or making it shorter changes the possible outcomes. Now, I can show you in a second how that displays on the tool, but that is fundamentally the engine of this way of running experiments, that you simulate before you run the experiment. You have your baseline, and you simulate what's going to happen, what's likely to happen. And then you decide how long you run the experiment, how much is the risk you're willing to take, and what could the possible future be.
Now, Andrea, we've spoken about this for the purposes of an A/B test, but I know you've also said that noise can affect KPIs, those long-running metrics as well. Could you lean into explain how, from a KPI perspective, noise can have a same or similar impact?
Yes, 100%. So this everything we have said so far works for conversion rates, and a KPI is essentially a conversion rate. Like, for example, you were KPI of signups. So from traffic to the sign up page to actual conversions, that's a conversion rate, right? And the way teams use KPIs is mainly monitoring like weekly changes between last week and this week, and they have 2 conversion rates. And so this is exactly the same as Lift in the case we just discussed. There are 2 conversion rates, and you are comparing them, right? So there is no difference. And to understand is the change due to something that really happened or to noise, I built another tool, which is called Noise Check. So if I click here, this opens Noise Check. And Noise Check is telling me that this can look like an 8.3% improvement, but it is most likely noise. You see? So why? Because here you have it visual. This is the mean. It's the mean value of the conversion rate for B, and this is for A. Again, here we have A and B, but this could be 2 different weeks of KPIs, right? So past week and current week, or 2 weeks ago and last week. And what you want to see is if these 2 means are far enough compared to their uncertainty, okay? And this is something that nobody does with KPIs. We do it with A/B testing, yes, like people consider uncertainty if they run this manually. Tools, they don't show uncertainty. Some do, some not, so it depends on the tool. But in general, people understand that when you run an A/B test, there is uncertainty you have to consider. But when you look at KPIs, you generally have a spreadsheet, and that's it. You are comparing this 3% you saw last week with the 3.25 you saw this week. And so people celebrate when they see like 3.25. Oh, we're doing better than last week. No, you don't. It's the same, because the uncertainty is such that the measure is just wobbled. And the problem here is that when the situation is the opposite, like, I don't know, you measure here, I'm going to change the number 110. So now the new week is worse than the week before, then people start to panic. They start to find who has somebody has broken something, right? So they start to take actions on like changing the page, changing the process. Maybe somebody ran a campaign and that campaign gets criticized, all because of this little bit of difference on the negative side. But if you run this very simple noise check, you see that, okay, this is normal. This is just noise that has moved, has kind of wobbled the metric. So there is nothing to do here. So what I have seen in practice is that teams tend to kind of run in circles, because every time the measurement moves, they take action when it was just noise and there was no need to take any action at all. Does this make sense?
It does. It does. And what I quite like is it's disarming and removing the emotion, and it's the same metric surface area. We're just looking at it from a different perspective. Andrea, the tools that you've built that you're demonstrating here, are most product analytic tools missing these components in them? Is there any way for product managers with existing analytics tools to be able to see noise in the way that you've been able to present it today?
Yeah, so in the tools, this is completely missing. Nobody thinks in terms of stochastic paths. Why? Because statistically, mathematically, what matters for statistics are the two numbers, the traffic and conversion rate, traffic and conversions, from which we derive conversion rate. And these are sufficient numbers. So it doesn't matter, in other words, it doesn't matter in which order the conversion came, how much traffic did you have on different days of the week. At the end of the week, you take the totals, and that's it gives you the full picture, okay? But reality is different, because if we look at the numbers every day, we see this wobble, right? And the problem is that people make decisions on what they see. They look at the data, somebody looks at the data daily, and when they see the path that goes up and down, they make decisions on those changes, okay? And this is it like peaking is considered wrong, but I don't agree with that. Peaking is wrong only if it's not part of your decision policy. If you set your decision policy let's switch back to this tool. If you set your decision policy to allow for peaking, and you see the effect of peaking in the simulator, then you can peak, because you accounted that behavior into your decision policy. Does this make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So I want to show you something more on the simulator here. So all these stochastic paths we see, they're actually very well known in statistics. So they can be summarized in what is called confidence interval. Mm-hmm. So this purple curve you see behind the runs is the confidence interval at 95%. And if I now clear the runs, you see only the confidence interval. Now, the interesting bit about this is that we do know uncertainty, and uncertainty is basically this part of the curve here at week 4. This is how wide our uncertainty is. But this view makes it evident how uncertainty behaves in time. You see that in the first 2 weeks here, uncertainty is much larger. At week 1 is enormous. So if you run the experiment for a week, because you think, I have enough conversions, but you are still operating in a part of the curve that is massively uncertain. So
Understood. So coming full circle, Andrea, back to where we opened at around the 95% number, I can now visually see why even targeting 95%, it could be the wrong number. There's still this purple envelope is still very wide. Is is your point there that the current decision thresholds, like 95%, are too conservative and there's a cost to that?
Yes. So let's see that. So this uncertainty you see here is the uncertainty of the measurement. Okay. So that would be the uncertainty in this case of this 8.33. Now, when we talk about the threshold for decision making, we are talking about what I call zero lift uncertainty. And that would be what is commonly known as the null hypothesis. All right. So that uncertainty envelope is this, the gray one. So it's centered around 0, and this is its width. The boundary, the upper boundary here, is the z-score of the experiment. These are all known facts in statistics. And the typical value here for 95% is z-score equal 1.96 for those who know some statistics. So this is the standard threshold. Now, to certify the experiment, we want this little dot, the measurement, to be outside the gray area. Because the gray area here signifies, it represents the wobble of all the stochastic paths if the lift was 0, if A was the same as B. Okay?
Understood.
So here, our measurement falls inside this gray area. It means that it could have been just noise. Okay? So, but the mechanics are the same. Like during the first 2 weeks, this uncertainty for the zero lift is massive. So you can't really make decisions in the first 2 weeks. And if you look at this, you start to see, okay, maybe from week 3, we have something we can measure because uncertainty keeps going down rather sharply for the first 2 weeks. And at week 4, it starts to stabilize. So in this particular case, and by the way, the shape and width of the uncertainty region depends on the conversion rates here and the lift. So you kind of you can play with time, which correspond to sample size, to understand where's the optimal point for your experiment to get a decision. So how long do you run the experiment? So one thing I want to show you, now let's change the numbers a bit. I'm gonna raise this dot here to bring it out of the curve at week 4, all right? So this would be statistically significant now. And the lift in this case, in this example, is massive, it's 28%, but that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is this. If now I start to simulate the stochastic runs, let me get this out of the way, okay? You see the first one is statistically significant. This is as well. And this one here, the black one, the third one we simulated, it never gets statistically significant within the 4 weeks. You see that?
I do.
And it's the same underlying lift of 28%.
Right.
So we are missing this winner. It doesn't matter how you flip it, you cannot call this statistically significant.
Right.
Unless you lower the threshold. We're getting there. So if I do this 100 times, you can see that there is a bunch of these possible outcomes that I'm not capturing. And this is the problem. Like this is, in my opinion, this is a bigger problem from a practical point of view. Because in theory, yes, we can run the experiment forever and we can get to the proper sample size and then we're fine. But a business cannot do that because the traffic is limited. And you still have to run the experiment and you still have to make decisions. So in this particular case, if you look here, the winner capture rate is 63%, which is not too high. It means that I'm going to miss 37% of times. I'm going to miss the winner.
Right.
So if I run 10 experiments and they're all winners, I'm going to call 6 and 4 I'm losing. And this is a good case because the lift is massive. As you go with smaller lifts, this winner capture goes down, it drops sharply. And then you get to a point where you're basically running experiments and they're all inconclusive. You never find a winner, even if it was a winner.
Understood. So bringing this back to the decision policy, what I'm really want to surface as a clarity of thought for product managers and those focusing on growth here is the decision policy is one thing, but decision quality is different. And if a product team wanted to start thinking about decision quality instead of just the outcomes, where would they begin immediately, Andrea? What's the first thing that has to change tomorrow in product growth and growth teams to start considering this decision quality?
Yes. So I will show you on the tool. So if I open here, you see that I have a bunch of settings. So one of the settings is no decision before day number. So 14 days is the minimum. If I were to put 7 days here, those numbers here will change or not. In this case, they don't. But like, let's put the 28. So now I'm forcing a decision only after 4 weeks. And this changes the numbers here because now I cannot make a decision before. See, everything goes black. And after I can make a decision. So this is part of the decision policy, okay? The minimum time you need to run the test. And then there is the other variable. Do we want to run the test and call it on a specific duration? For example, in this case, 6 weeks, or are we allowed to pick before? And do we pick weekly or daily? So weekly is a good middle ground. Like every Monday, you check the numbers and you make your calls. So if I allow for that, now I can see here that I have at each week, I have a checkpoint where I check the numbers and I can make my call. But look what happens if I look weekly. Here, the winner capture rate, if I peek at the data weekly, is 82%. And if I don't, is 76%. So I can catch more winners by looking weekly, okay? And again, you have to simulate this because, of course, now we are running a simulation on a case with a very high lift. If the lift is small, you will start to catch false positives. And now precision here is 100%, but in the real world, you will call more losers, okay? This is a real problem. So I don't want to say that this solves everything. What I'm saying is that companies must become aware of the trade-offs, and this tool shows you the trade-offs. Like there are 3 types of error: type 1, type 2, and type M. Type 1 is how many false positives we call, and this is usually set to 5%. And type 2 is, are we able to call a winner if a winner exists? This is power in statistics. And type M is when we identify a lift. How true is that lift? Like we see like the underlying lift here is 28%, but what we measure in this instance here on this stochastic path is 78%. So we observe 78%, but the true lift is not 78%. So that's type M error. In this simulator, you are able to see the 3 types of errors and decide which one you want to focus on. And it's, in my opinion, like experimentation as a short blanket, and you kind of have to learn how to pull it. And traditional methodology focuses on type 1 error. So the CRO industry has been focusing, obsessing, I would say, on minimizing false positives. But that's not really the problem, the main problem, in my opinion, because businesses are constrained on traffic. So the real problem becomes that you are missing on winners. So my recommendation is to use a tool like this, try to lower the decision threshold so you can capture more winners, but you must be mindful that you're introducing more false positives.
Understood. Andrea, this has been a fascinating session. I really appreciate you taking the time to not only share these tools, but discuss some of the methodologies and mindsets behind it as well. Andrea, where can people go to learn more about the tools you've shared today?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's called confidencestory.com. And I also have a split testing tool that can show you. So this tool runs entirely in Google Tag Manager. It's free, 100% free. And it basically splits the traffic for you. So it does what a paid tool does. I developed this for a client back when Google optimized Sunset. So we decided to make our own split testing tool, and I ran through this tool more than 40 million people in traffic. And well, again, it's free. It has a UI like this, so you really don't have to do anything in Tag Manager. You use the UI to configure the experiment, then you export the container from here, import it in Tag Manager, and you can run experiments completely for free. So confidencestory.com, you can go there and get this plus the other tools I've shown.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing the tools, sharing your experience. And to be honest, I've been schooled in a lot around statistics and around how to change my mind when it comes to A/B testing, features, campaigns, etc. So I've got a lot more to pay attention to now because of this session. So thank you so much for uplifting me on this moment.
Thank you for having me.
For the audience listening, I hope you've found this session from Andrea valuable as well. Obviously, with tools like agentic engineering, making the ability to roll out new features, experiments faster and cheaper than ever, then we need better tools to be able to track the performance of those changes and those campaigns. So I hope you've also found value from Andrea's session today. If you'd like to learn more about Product Coalition, you can do so over at productcoalition.com. Until next episode, thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Coalition podcast, hosted by Jay Stansel. Got questions or want to explore more topics? Connect with Jay on LinkedIn or join the ever-growing Product Coalition community on Substack. Thanks for listening.